Good evening. I'd like to call the monthly board meeting for the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District, Monday, June 5th, 2017, to order. We're going to stand and have a moment of silence for 9 firefighters that lost their lives this month, followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment on agenda items. I have one card from Mr. Alex Grant on item number 9A.
Thank you. What is the percent increase or decrease in the net pension liability for the firefighters' pension trust fund for this present reported audit using the net pension liability ending September 30th, 2014, referencing page 51, which stated that at that time that amount was $21,321,912. And then in the following year, on September 30th, 2015, in your audit of page number 83, that figure was reported to be $23,518,960, which is some 12% more than the $21,321,912 figure in that you quoted in September 30th, 2014. And was this in any way attributed by your statement on page 42 of that September 30th, 2014 audit regarding firefighter pension trust fund pension in benefit not to exceed, quote, $210,000 for those firefighters hired prior to 2010? And I believe that was at a 3.58% annual increase in pension, capping at 17 years after retirement. So that is question number 1. And do I have time for question number 2?
You got green light still on.
Thank you. Why are we still paying off the debt for this fire station number 4 construction loan fund that started 20 years ago? Well, over 20 years ago. The bank loan began in 2003, ending in year 2023, when, according to the audits, previous audits, issued to the fire district each September 30th in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, and 2007, that total for the construction cost of this fire station was $6,878,267. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments on agenda items? All right, I need a motion to approve the May 8th, 2017 regular board meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need the approval of May 2017 and current expenditures and ACH payments and acknowledgement of the financial report and acknowledgement of wire transfers and transfers between accounts.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, Commissioner's business.
Have none.
Have none.
I'm looking at the budget schedule, the budget planning calendar, and I have some concerns. The first time that the commissioners are going to meet is July 6th at 3 o'clock.
Correct.
I hope before that time we will have a temporary budget for review. I'm concerned if 3 o'clock almost indicates that we have to have this thing done before 5. I'm not too sure what kind of a budget review we're going to do. Is it going to be a line item, zero-based budget, or just a comparison of one year to the other?
They're very similar to when you were on the board before. Do you remember how we did them before?
Terrible question to ask me, do you remember? The answer is no, I don't quite remember. And it's not important. I'm just curious how we're doing things today, not how we did them in the past. So, Chief, how are you going to present this new budget to us? Because first, we didn't ask you how to, as far as I know. We didn't ask you for a line item budget. We didn't ask you for a zero-based budget. And this absence of communications is the reason I'm concerned about the approximately 2-hour time frame to do the budget. And by the way, July 6th is the meeting, and July 10th, we are required to present a temporary millage rate, a proposed millage rate. So that doesn't give us much time.
That's a not to exceed millage
Not
rate.
to, I know, proposed, not to exceed, okay. Okay, what do you think, Chief?
Yes, sir. Typically, what we'll do is we'll have in-house workshops, which we will have our budget meeting here for in-house workshops. Once we develop a draft budget, when all the divisions implement or put in their budget to Lisa, I'll go through it, and we'll go through it as a staff and make any cuts or recommendations from a staff perspective. Once we have that draft ready, I will put out that I will meet with you personally, and we will go over the budget after you've had time to read it, line by line, issue by issue, depending on how detailed you'd like to get with the budget in a personal meeting with myself. And then once your recommendations or ideas are made to me and I understand your concerns, or if you like the budget, not like the budget, or certain items, then we'll bring them up at that meeting in which all commissioners will have had a opportunity to view the budget or go over the budget if each individual commissioner would like with me before that meeting, at which time the commissioners have the opportunity to discuss amongst each other their personal opinions about the budgets or line items, et cetera. Once that is done, then I will try to mold the budget after all the commissioners' concerns and present a budget hopefully addressing each individual commissioner's concerns or the commissioner's concerns as a whole. That is where the not to exceed millage rate comes into play, which is the next meeting. At that point, we can go down in millage rate should there be some necessary cuts in the budget or required cuts or recommended cuts. At that point, we can go down from that millage rate. However, we will not be able to exceed that millage rate. So there will be some time after that, prior to the adaptation or acceptance of the budget, in which the board will have the opportunity to make recommendations to me in what direction they would like to go financially.
Okay. Just so I'm sure, 3 o'clock we're going to start. We don't have a cap. We don't have to leave at 5. We work until we're finished.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
One thing I'm going to ask you for, I want, very similar to what's on this new report here from the consultants, I want the reserve fund balances for the years 2000 right up to 2016, so I can just see how the reserves are looking. Copy that. That would be fine. Okay. You've answered my question. You know, and I'm sure you do, Chief, that there's been a 6% increase in assessed valuations.
Yes, sir.
Approximately, but that's not finalized either. These magic numbers come up, 6% increase, fallback rate, and proposed, I'm hoping that you in your work now can work this budget as close as possible to the fallback rate. Better if possible, That's just my recommendation. I thank you.
Commissioner McCourt? You have any-
I wasn't finished,
Oh,
though.
I'm sorry, you said
I'm
thank you. I'm
And
sorry.
I thanked him for that issue.
Yes, sir.
Just as general speaking, I spoke to the chief a couple of weeks ago about controlled burnings in Bonita, and the chief convinced me that we have a policy in the department that handles that. I did make a suggestion. I'm hoping that you reviewed it, chief, and I just want you to acknowledge my work. That's all for that.
Yes, sir.
Say thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Just hold on here 1 second. This is another thing I'm going to ask you to do, Chief. I have a concern about the future of this department and the future of you as our leader. I am contemplating recommending you to attend Harvard University in the J.F. Kennedy School of Government Executive Program. In order to do that, I need some details on the program. I'll assume that you would want to do something like that. That's beside the point. I want to recommend you to do it. Chief Kinsey has gone there. My friend right here, Jim, has gone there. Mike Scott has gone there. And many, many executive leaders in Lee County and Florida throughout. So that's my intention to do that. I need some support. I don't have the records anymore of how to do it. So if you would get me that, and the board now would have some preliminary notification that I would do that, and they could have a heads up when it's time. Okay, and I think that's it on commission business for me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner McCourt?
Just a couple quick items, Chief. I asked you some time ago, I think, about this 5-foot setback.
Yes, sir.
Building code, is there any update on that?
You
Have
have.
we found it anything?
I have not received an update. The fire marshal was out of town about the 5-foot setbacks on the beach. But I will get back with you. I apologize for the delay.
Okay. I don't know that we'd have anything to say about now after the fact, but I think if it is a concern, we should at least be voicing it. Secondly, I asked you for a run of the calls
Yes, sir.
with date, time, and so on and so forth. Is that still coming?
We have that. My suggestion would be, because that is 400 pages of documentation, essentially, for all the calls, broken down like the way you would like them. We are currently in the process of doing the Fitch report, which should be finished very soon. And I think it would save you trouble if it's for what you want. That gives all the information you'll need. And I would suggest you wait till after the Fitch presentation, which talks about times of days, types of calls, type of units, how long the units are working, staff hours involved with each call. I mean, it is a very, very detailed about the call load in different districts, different areas, types. You know, it is extremely specific.
Is that for 2016?
That will be 2015,
15?
I believe. Yes, because we started the study in late 2016, so we needed a full year to document. But typically what happens is, even though the call loads do go up somewhat, a percentage, the
So what,
the-
like calendar year or?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's dissected. The dissection is essentially the same. For example, statewide, everyone runs 2% fires. I mean, like, for an example, the same would happen with Bonita, where essentially 63 to 67% of our calls are medical. That's been the mark. But I think for if you really want to do a deep dive into the call loads and unit utilization, the Fitch report is doing that for us.
And that also includes medical calls?
Yes, it's going to include every aspect of the fire district,
Do
essentially.
you have one I could look at from previous years? Has it been done before?
This is the first one we've done since 2007,
Oh, okay.
was the last facility usage report.
Yeah.
So this will be the most current, most detailed report that we've done in some time, in 10 years.
Are we within a month of that, you think?
Absolutely, we
I
should
thought
be.
so, yeah, that's
I mean,
what I've been, it's been
it was
kinda,
supposed to have been done
it's been dragging
some time
along.
ago, but it's been dragging out a little bit. But, I prefer accuracy over timeliness.
That'll be
so-
fine, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have the same old drum I've been beating for the last 8 years. Lee County put in their October 1st budget for this year to put another ambulance in Bonita. To date, that hasn't happened. We were supposed to have a unit going in Station 25. I asked Joe, and he passed that on to Richie, I believe, to do some checking with the county. And basically, it's smoke and mirrors, the answer. You guys, maybe I'm being, I've got a different opinion on this, but it just seems to me that they aren't able to get enough help to man these stations and these ambulances, and the turnover rate with Lee County EMS is huge. And that problem's not going to go away, and no matter, they just got rid of the director up there, and I've been beating the drum for 8 years that we should be doing it ourselves, and obviously we failed at that endeavor, but I really strongly believe, with the support of the rest of the board, we need to keep their feet to the fire. I came on the board 8.5 years ago. We had 2.5 ambulances in Bonita, and here we are 8.5 years later with a significantly larger call volume. We are now the fastest growing city in Florida and the 5th or 6th fastest growing city in the country, and we still have 2.5 ambulances, and it's just a burr in my saddle, has been for a long time, and I don't know where we go from here, but I do know that sitting on our hands and not doing anything isn't ever going to get it done. And I don't know, I'm certainly open for suggestions on this, but the time has come again for us to bring this to the front burner. I think I made a comment at a meeting a few months ago, or last summer, that, okay, if they're going to put that in the budget and they're going to do this on the 1st of October, then we'll just be quiet. Well, they sent somebody down, they did some construction at Station 5 to move some of their guys here, and here we are in June. They told us a couple months ago, well, they couldn't put anybody in there in season, but why would you put anybody in season when we're really busy? Why don't we wait till the off-season and put somebody there? That was their answer. And here we are now in the off-season, and we're still not there. So I think you sent out the email to everybody on what the answer was, but to me, I thought the answer was pathetic. I don't know how everybody else feels about this, but I do know that we have an obligation to provide rescue service to our residents, and I very strongly don't believe we're filling that. I know our guys are on scene in 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, and you can probably fill me in a little better, but just from some of the investigations I've done recently, there's 10 and 15-minute wait times for an ambulance to get on scene after your guys are there, and that's unacceptable. And I don't know what we're going to do about it, because we've exhausted a lot of our, if not all of our, our legal avenues. But I think in the political spectrum, I think we need to make this more of a political football than it is, because one person has to die, and that's too many. I mean, it's like, I'm open for suggestions from both administration and my fellow board members.
Mr. Chairman, if I could suggest, let's wait for the Fitch report, let's get some facts of what we have, and then let's prepare a resolution for the board to review.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I'd like to comment. I'm in agreement with our chairman. It's funny, just in a very short time ago, we decided to put 3 new fire stations in Bonita Springs, an acknowledgement of response times and growth. And we have guidelines. There are guidelines: time to respond, distance, workload. I wonder why the Lee County doesn't have something similar. How can they just continue to go on with 2.5 ambulances in this amount of time? So, in support of the commissioner, of the chairman, I think we should go public. I think we should, the board should either write a letter to Lee County expressing our disdain and demanding service for the residents, you know. So, I support you, Mr. Chairman. I think we do need those ambulances. We're not going to get them unless we do something. I know the chairman would like to have it, and so would I, by the way, have the ambulances in the Bonita Springs Fire Department. And our effort didn't seem to work on that end, but that doesn't end that issue either. So I support you. I think we should go public. The board, I don't think we should wait for anything. He's brought it up. It's on the table, and we should speak. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Murphy. I'd like to see this report first, because that could be some ammunition for us, more ammunition. I know Mr. Fitzpatrick would like to start right now, but I'd like to have that in my pocket. Fitzgerald, I'm sorry, Mr. Fitzgerald. I forgot your name already, Ed. But I just want to have that piece of, that report in my pocket first, and then definitely do whatever we have to do to get this in front burner, in the paper, in the news, whatever we have to do politically.
Well, one of the things they answered in the email was that they're going to have an ambulance stationed at Station 42 in Estero, and that's supposed to then move an ambulance that's at 22 to 25, make that a 12-hour ambulance, and then make station, or from 23 rather to 25, and make 22 what's now a 12-hour, make it a 24, and having a conversation with the chief, I understand how that makes sense, because 22 and 42 from Estero can kind of fill in the gap there. But my concern is all the way into the back of Bonita Bay. That's a long way. That's a long way if somebody's having a heart attack. And we run a lot of calls in there. It's not like we're in there just occasionally. We run a lot of calls in there. And I just feel that one screw up is too many, and we can afford to do it. We have the resources to do it, and it just aggravates me to knowing that we don't control our own destiny, and we're at somebody else's mercy when they decide how many ambulances we need, and we're responsible for the residents of this city, and we get nowhere. Every time you guys go up and meet with them, every time I've gone up and met with them, all I get is a lot of glad handing and, oh yeah, we're going to do that. And at the end, 8.5 years later, we're still sitting here with 2.5 ambulances, and our call volume is way higher. Excuse me. And I think that I really believe that if we have to do it through a media blitz, if we have to get some reporters in here to listen to our story and put it in the paper and put it on television, but it's a dire situation. And as long as we sit here and we don't do anything, and it's our duty and obligation to do something about it. And I think that if we don't kick this right up to the forefront again, then shame on us.
If I may, Chief, 2.5 ambulances doesn't seem like enough. Huh? In your opinion, I mean, is 2.5 ambulances enough to
No.
provide? Okay, I just
In
wanna
my
hear that.
opinion, it is not. I do have a suggestion. Listening to the board, I think a appropriate course of action that will significantly help our situation with the transport units is because they do have slotted to have the 3 ambulances in Bonita Springs. However, the 4th ambulance will be on the border at the Bonita Community Health Center when it opens, and as the chairman and I spoke, that is some time from now.
It's about a year and a half from
About
now.
a year
I mean,
and a half.
And our volume keeps going up and up and up, and we keep getting the story, well, guess what? 2 years from now, we're going to put another half an ambulance, or we're going to give you another ambulance. So I've been hearing this now for 8 years.
Mr. Chairman?
So
Oh, go ahead. I think you all know how I feel. I've made my pitch enough times. We are in the emergency medical business, no question about it. 70% of what we do are medical calls, and we do a good job of it. I'm not complaining about that. We're just doing it with the wrong equipment. And we were told that back in the 70s when they came out with the burning report, whatever the name of that was. They
America's
criticized the fire service for running the wrong equipment. And what I've suggested to you, and I'll suggest to you over and over again, is what we should do is buy an ambulance.
We can't. They won't give us the permit. We will not be able to get a COPCN, and that's been our biggest problem. That's been our biggest fight. We've lost every legal battle that we've...
I hear you saying this over and over again, but I'm not telling you to run transport. I'm telling you just to buy an ambulance,
To do what with?
to make your calls. We can make the same calls that we make with fire engines with ambulances.
Well, Estero
Let me
tried
see-
that.
Excuse
Estero-
me,
yeah.
excuse me, let me finish.
Sure.
And I think the first time that you go out to an on a call like this and run out with an ambulance rather than a fire truck, the people are gonna be standing on the street cheering. And secondly, if then you're not allowed to transport that individual and you have to sit there with an ambulance in the driveway waiting for a county
real
ambulance
ambulance
to
come.
come, I guarantee you, you're gonna get all the publicity you need to get what you want. It'll happen automatically.
Well, having said that, Estero at one point had 2 ambulances. I don't know where they stand on that now, and they couldn't transport.
I'd like to comment on that with the current events update with North Collier. North Collier is purchasing, I believe, four ambulances under the same pretext that you just mentioned, sir, to run rescue with 4 ambulances that are not allowed to transport. That seems to be like an adequate
I'm sorry,
proving ground.
who has that?
North Collier.
Where?
North Collier.
Oh, North
Northwest.
Collier.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that will be a good testing ground to that theory, because that's essentially what they plan on doing.
Well, I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world to me that we should be going out on medical calls with that monster engine and the, just the efficiency alone makes sense to be using a smaller vehicle. And why buy a truck or something like you did on the beach? Buy an ambulance and start running an ambulance. When people see us with an ambulance, they're going to realize very quickly, this is what we do and this is what we really do best, in my opinion. And then then we can tell our story. Hey, we'd like to take you to the hospital, but we can't. And I can tell you, I think, at least I know the people in my neighborhood would absolutely come unglued if that happened. So that's what's going to force the issue, I believe.
I just want like to comment. I can't agree with my commissioner friend. You send an ambulance out along with EMS's ambulance. Now you have 2 ambulances down there. By the way, the people on that ambulance are firefighters. If an alarm comes in, we now send this ambulance to the fire?
And that's a valid argument.
I can't buy that. I buy bringing the ambulances in, but I don't buy changing the culture of the fire department. I tell you the truth, I'm not worried whether Pat's neighbors are happy when we send an ambulance or a fire truck. I think efficiently, and your policy is fire trucks go out on alarms, not ambulances. Anyway.
All right, well, now we've talked about it. We're going to try to figure something out, but we can't, one thing's for certain, I think we all agree, we can't just sit on our hands and pretend it's going to get better. It's not going to get better, and I think that whatever direction we move from here, and I think the Fitch report will help us immensely. I mean, I already know the Fitch report's going to help us immensely. They know, the county knows that they're deficient, okay? They don't even meet their own ordinance, but we've had that argument ad nauseum, and we've gotten nowhere with it. So now I think it has to be played out in the court of public opinion. And one thing I do know about politicians, they don't like the court of public opinion just shooting at them. And I think that we have to make a concerted effort here in Bonita to start taking pot shots at them and say, what the hell's going on here? Why 8 years, 8 years after the fact that we started to go after this, we still have the same number of ambulances in the fastest growing city in the state? And I think that's a very valid question. And I'm not trying to make any more political enemies in Lee County, but at this point, the people of this town are more important to me than somebody's feelings up in Fort Myers. And that's all I got to say about it.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
I think we should. Do we document incidences where the basic problem of sending 2 different units out, and do we document the cases of case history of incidents where it's proved to be fault, where we get there before the ambulance, we treat the patient, and then we wait?
Yes.
How frequently, I know that's one of the reasons that I want the fire department ambulance there. But if we had some documentation of specific incidences or total times that we were waiting, not we were waiting, the patient was waiting, where they're serving and they don't go. I don't know if you have that information, but I suggest that we, the chief officers and the company officers, try to record these incidents as best we possibly can. That's our basic argument. The real basic argument is we get there, we treat, and we can't transport. We should be able to document just how frequently that happens, and specifically where the extreme cases where somebody really suffers. Just comment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on from here. The next item is old business, and I think everybody got a copy of Terry Lewis's opinion on the public meetings and reasonable opportunity to be heard. I know you had a little issue with it.
I do.
But the law states it, and I think just to protect ourselves, we live with his opinion.
I still have a little problem, but I'm going to abide by this, by the way, because he'll scare me to death. But I wonder if I make a motion without having an advance motion, we're worried about notifying the public, and the public is here. We have public comment before we vote.
I asked that exact question to Terry Lewis one time, and you know what he told me? He said, the public that's at your meeting is at your meeting because they read your agenda and there's something on that agenda that they want to talk about. If you're going to bring something up that isn't on the agenda and somebody else had looked at your agenda and said, well, I don't need to go tonight, there's nothing I care about, if you add an item to that agenda, you're opening yourself up to that liability, and that was
But
the answer in a nutshell.
The public doesn't have to mean 40,000 people.
No, it doesn't.
Today, the public is 3 people, I think, or 4 or 5 people here. That's the public, you know, and I don't think we have a responsibility to communicate to every one of them. That's my point.
Right.
I'm going to try as best I possibly can not to make this a necessity. I'll try to amend the agendas before the meetings so that at a meeting we'll be voting on something where the commissioners had advance notice, and maybe the public also.
Okay.
So,
Now, under new business, we have our 2015-16 fiscal year audit with Ashley Brown and Company.
are we finished with old business, or just we're still on new business?
That was the old business, that's all that was on the old business.
No, I am not finished with old business. I'd like to ask the chief what progress we made on the potential for fixing Bonita Grandy Road, the visual contact between the citizens and the, have we gotten any place on it?
Yes, sir. We have looked at some bids. I don't have them in front of me, but it is my recommendation to the board that we budget for it in this budget year, because we're in the budgetary process as we speak.
Okay. Next, we talked about the Fitch report. I don't know how long these gentlemen have been on site, but I know it's probably 6 or 7 months. I have seen nothing, no preliminary reports, no conferences or anything, so that's my comments. I wish that we had a little bit more interfacing with them, and I hope that the Fitch consultancy is not over just by deliverance of a report. We have to have some opportunity to question their work and see how it went on. So I hope we have a meeting, Board of Commissioners and the consultants.
Yes.
Okay. And I have a comment also about the minutes. I got an email from Mr. Pure, basically commenting on the minutes of the last meeting. Not happy with it. I think, by the way, the one he complained about is okay. we did address the two items that were brought up. My problem with the public speaking, public input into our meetings is that a citizen will get up, make a comment, and that seems to be the end of it. I don't know how he gets follow-up. Did we act on it? Do we have an obligation to report to him? Do we have an obligation to ourselves to take his input as information and a valid recommendation to do something? Do we do anything? So I think, Chief, I sent you a little recommendation that we maybe just review how we do this. Because I think on this agenda, we have a thing called public comment. I was hoping maybe we could have a new one on there that's, I forget the words I used when I suggested it to you, would be public comment feedback, something of that nature, so that if there was a public comment made this month here, that the next month we would at least comment, respond on, and on our agenda, respond to that comment. So, as I think I also said, some public comment is rhetorical. They just want to praise us or yell at us or make vague statements. But some public
I
comment...
missed the praise ones. I don't
I said it very low.
I don't remember those.
I think, you know what I asked you, Chief, maybe you could share my recommendation with the other commissioners. I only did it yesterday, I didn't have a chance, so.
May I
that we
comment,
could-
sir?
Oh, you'll comment anyway.
Yes, sir. Essentially, the way it is supposed to work is when the public makes public comment and brings up points
Right.
that the board is interested in discussing, that it means something to whichever commissioner feels like it's an issue they need to address, then that gets brought up to me to put on the agenda, at which time the chairman has the final say in the approval of whatever agenda it is. So whatever's on the agenda. That's typical as you see throughout government. So if there is something, just to let the board understand, if there is something that the public brings up that you would like to address officially in a as an agenda item, then I certainly will take the advice from you and present it in the next agenda, with regards, obviously, to the chairman's approval of that agenda. The chairman sets the agenda.
Well, I have the right to ask for information to be put on the agenda, so.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But the chairman has the right to approve the agenda or not approve the
Does
agenda.
he really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's good to be kings.
Okay. What I feel you're doing, I hope the other gentlemen feel what you're doing, is that if something is brought to us, we act on it. And I can't say I observed that policy going on in the past.
Well, in the past, I know we've had public comment from several people, and if it's a budget question or a question about numbers, many times I have directed, or the board has directed Lisa to answer that with an email or a phone call and a correspondence. We do not answer public comment at the meetings, but if it's something that administration can answer, and most of the public comment questions are more for administration than they are for us, and typically we will assign that to administration to answer, and I'm under the assumption that we follow up on those when you've been directed to. I mean, I've never had any reason to doubt that you haven't followed up on that. So that's been typically in the past when we've had questions like that, rather than answer them at the meeting, we just assign that to administration to answer.
Chief, I'm glad you remind me of my responsibility. So my responsibility is if the public comment comes here and I am, whether one or all of us, if I am influenced by it, I promise you the next board meeting I will have an opinion. And I will bring it to you before that board meeting, no. So,
Yes, sir.
I think that public coming and speaking before this dais is not it's not the opposite. It's an important procedure. It's an important communication to us, and I think it's warrants some response. And I promise you that I will try to respond. Okay.
You all set now?
No, I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'll be brief, but feel free to interrupt me if you got any questions as I go through this. For the record, I'm Jeff Brown with Ashley Brown and Company CPAs, and I'm here to go over the draft of your financial statement audit as of September 30th, 2016. On page, there's a couple different page number things going on here, so I'll use the page numbers at the bottom. Page 1 is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. You can see at the top, it starts with your assets. Biggest position there being cash at about $10 million. The one thing I wanted to bring to your attention is if you look down under the general fund, you've got those assignments. I believe that was what one of the commissioners was talking about as far as what the reserve/fund balance carry forwards are for each year. So they're delineated on this page, and then the number down at the bottom that says unassigned, that's essentially the mathematical calculation of what's left that is not assigned above it. So that's the 2.4 million there in the general fund. If you flip over to the next page, page 2, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. In for-profit world, this would be your income statement or your profit and loss. At the top, you can see that the total revenues of the general fund just under 21 million, 20.9. Total expenditures 19.389. So that excess of revenue over expenditures 1.536 million. So again, a good positive indication that the district, the revenues exceeded expenditures. So that increased your fund balance there down at the bottom of the page.
Question, please.
Sure.
1.5 million, where does that show up? It's excess of reserves, of revenues over expenditures. Where does it show up on the balance sheet of the new budget?
It doesn't exactly show up there. It's actually added to that 2.4 million of the unassigned number.
Okay, so you could see the progression of the department's efficiency by looking at the totals of the reserves from one year to next.
Correct.
The reserves continue increasing. It actually means the department is performing very well.
Correct.
We are operating less than our budget, expenditures less than income.
Right. And the other thing, you got to kind of look at them all in total because, I mean, they're reserves or what we call assignments. So that's board designations as far as emergency and disaster, what we're going to save for our self-insurance, that sort of thing.
All right, where would that revenue, in this case, 1.5, in which reserve would it show up?
It doesn't
doesn't.
necessarily work like that.
Oh, I see.
If you almost have to go down to the very bottom of the page and that $10.826 million number.
Yep.
If you flip back to the first page, you see that same number there. So it doesn't exactly go from that 1.5 goes into one particular bucket.
Right.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, okay.
No, sir.
All right. But am I correct if I look at fund balances from one year to the next, it does indicate the performance of the department?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
does. So, right, so to answer your question there, and there's a little bit of, with the transfers between the impact fee fund and what we call, and the general fund, but in total, your fund balance increased almost 2 million. So the third line from the bottom, 1.952, that was the 2016 increase. You started the year at 8.8, and it went up to the 10.826.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Page 9 starts the notes to the financial statements. It describes the entity and the organization and some of what the major accounting policies and procedures are. And there's also some additional schedules in here that sort of support some of the numbers that are up in the front. The first one I'll show you is back on the bottom page, number 25. This is what we call your capital asset roll forward schedule. it's got a little bit more of a breakdown between land, buildings, equipment, office equipment, vehicles, where you started the fiscal year, what your purchases were through capital outlay, and then what the dispositions were, and it sort of as a synopsis of what happened with the capital assets for the year. And then if you flip to the next page, there's a similar schedule on the debt, and this answers the gentleman's question in the opening comments there, but this is a schedule of your total long-term debt. So if you look at the first number being notes payable, that's what I call your real debt. That's the real loan payments, basically. So you can see that number started at $3 million at the beginning of the year, and the principal reduction was $355,000. So the total balance on that loan is $2.6 million. And then if you flip over one more page, there's a little bit more breakdown of what all your loans are and when they're going to be retired. So that schedule down at the bottom breaks out the principal and the interest by year of what the payments are. And then up at the very top, there's a little paragraph that basically describes the terms of that loan, 2% interest rate, which is obviously very low. If you flip back to page 26, the big thing I was kind of telling you all about last year and the year before is this pension liability question that's out there. You see at the beginning of the year, it started at the $21 million number, and it increased about just under $2.4 million. Now, with that said, this is kind of what I was trying to explain last year too, is there's tons of assumptions in here. I mean, you have an actuary report, and they look at everyone's age, life expectancy, all the assumed rates of returns on the investments. So it is a number. I'm not going to say that it's not the right number, but even if you look at the actuary report, they explain a lot of what their assumptions are, and they say, okay, if the number, we use a 8% increase in investment return. If that number is really 7% or 9%, it's going to change things a lot, obviously. So it's the best guess. I mean, they know what they're doing.
What's the number we're currently using?
I don't know the answer to that question. It's in that action. As far as investment return,
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't have it with me.
Firefighters is 7.6.
Yeah, it's close to 8%.
Is it? It's traditional.
7.6 is for the firefighters.
7.6?
Yeah, is the assumption at this time.
Assumption or actual?
Rate of return assumption.
But actuaries deal in 99-year numbers, as I say, every year, and when they're wrong, they're dead, so nobody can say anything to them.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah. So I mean that's the intent is good to kind of attempt to quantify what that number is and put it on the financial statements, but I mean, it's been on the news. You've all heard about it too, as far as we're talking about the Florida retirement system, and Florida's in good shape compared to some of the other states out there, but that was the point of it. The problem is when you try to actually calculate what is our number, that you can't. So what they're doing is they have all these assumptions, and you've got a lot of historical data there to kind of guide them in the right direction, but there's a...
If I were to ask them, would they tell me where they're getting a 7.6% return today?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's valid. I mean, they know what there's historical data behind it to support that number. I would
Well,
say.
the big stock market crash really kind of messed on a short-term basis.
Right.
It really made a difference, but then they have a thing called smoothing, which makes it all go away.
There's the other, yeah. They have lots of words like that make, yeah, so. But that's basically what we're doing. We take we take their report, their numbers, and put them in here, and that's, to answer you can sort of see the trending of what's going on there. But again, I mean, there's lots of assumptions in there. What happens with the market, what's going to happen, who knows? I think that's all I have actually for you guys. Oh no, one more thing. Back on last couple pages here, page 30 and 31, there's what we call your budget versus actual schedules. Back on page 30 is for the general fund. Couple highlights here. The total revenues came in at $214,000 over budget, which is a positive variance. Obviously, a good indication there. The biggest factor there was inspection fees. Actual revenue was 362,000, and the budgeted was like 180, so that was an extra source of revenue. Halfway down the page, total expenditures, you're under budget there, and page 31 is the budget versus actual schedule for the impact fees. Those revenues were budgeted at 430,000, they only came in at 406, so a slight under budget there, but or negative variance, if you will. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any more questions you might have.
Where does it say you're responsible for every word on this document?
It doesn't. It says the opposite. It says that we're pretty sure they're almost right. We have a word called material. So we believe that they are materially correct as they are presented.
I was hoping differently, but
No, you won't get me to say that.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And if there's anything else we could do during, we work for you. So just please let us know.
Nice job as
Thank
usual.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
I did want to make a comment. Thank Jeff, by the way. All these numbers in this budget is put together by Lisa, and we will go over them specifically should you choose during the budgetary process when you meet with me. So you'll have a very, very good understanding of what this means before we move into the next budget.
Thank you. We move on now to Chief Daigle's report.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I'd like to say that we did get our ladder truck in. Came in, I believe it was last week. And the ladder truck already ran one call.
Really?
On its way back from Georgia, a firefighter from San Carlos, who actually works for 10-8, drives the trucks from Wisconsin down. He came across a rollover on a RV that caught fire, and he pulled two people out of the burning RV while he was on the road. He didn't have any water, so he couldn't put the fire out in the truck, but one person unfortunately died in that accident, but he did save the other party, so and suffered a few burns in doing so. So that truck has successfully ran
Wow.
its first rescue mission. That was a success for all intents and purposes.
Timing is everything.
Yeah. So it's here now in the bay, so should any of the members of the public or the board wish to go out and take a look at it, if you haven't already seen it, feel free after the meeting.
Chief?
Yes,
When
sir.
do we expect that vehicle to be in operation?
It should be in operation by November. We still have to outfit it, test it, order all the equipment. We have a significant amount of
training.
equipment, hose on it, all those things, hire the people for the station. So when the station is up and running, that truck will be up and running with the station and the new personnel. Yes, sir.
100-foot ladder, chief?
Sorry?
107.
107 foot, yeah.
107-foot stick, yes, sir. No bucket.
No bucket?
No bucket. We have the 70-foot bucket, the Suffin, and this is actually a single axle, so it's more maneuverable than our other truck.
Does it have a telescoping standpipe in it?
Yes, sir.
No.
Yes, sir. I wanted to be the first to climb it, and I turned my back up in Wisconsin, and the assistant chief was already halfway up the ladder, and I was not happy about that.
I'll tell you a quick story. New York City bought a 144-foot Mac Majaris aerial ladder sometime in the 70s, I think. And it was in service a month or so when they put out the dictate it should never be raised over 100. When it was up, it actually moved beyond any point of safety. So we had 44 extra feet anyway. I never climbed it, by the way.
Yes, sir. I did want to advise the board that the replacements for Battalion Chief Brown, who cannot really be replaced, but he has big shoes to fill, will be filled by Cesar Sanchez. He will be the next promoted battalion chief. Additionally, Nick Areka will fill Lieutenant Sanchez's position, and that will be effective July 1st. which will leave a firefighter vacancy, at which time we will, during our hire process, fill that position. So instead of 12, we'll hire 13, one as a backfill to this promotional process with the retirement of Battalion Chief Brown. Sad to say.
That's not an increase in quota, that's just,
No, sir, just a fill.
Was it Brad or Barry Brown?
Brad.
Brad, thank you.
Yes, sir. Station 27. Station 27 has been up and running for quite some time. It's an extremely busy station now, comparatively from what we thought it was going to be. It's probably running about 30% more calls than we anticipated at this point. The boat being on the water and on the lift has been a very valuable asset. In fact, I think we pulled somebody out of the water on a capsized boat 2 weeks ago. Memorial Day, yes. So that crew out there has got their hands full, and they're doing a good job. We get a lot of, I've heard a significant amount of positive feedback from that station out there in the community. Station 26, went out and take a look at Station 26. They got all the plumbing in the ground. They were pouring some concrete, supposedly. However, the rain put a delay on it, but they don't expect that to delay the overall building of that station, and should be done. It's on schedule as we speak. I did speak about the Fitch report. I did want to request of the board at your leisure to make a determination of whether you would like, and which would be my suggestion, as I spoke with the chairman about and several others of you, that to make a standalone meeting, public meeting specifically for that report. So the board has an extensive amount of time to review it personally, and then make comments on it when Dr. Knight does the presentation. So, Jessica, I'm sure we'll get back with you once I know the report has been finalized to solidify whatever dates the board will be able to make it. Would that be something the board would be interested in doing?
Absolutely.
yes.
And that is all I have. However, we are going to do a small presentation. You would hit the lights a little bit.
Her video is going to start first. Happens to me too, Richie. It happens to me too.
You didn't touch that, did you, Deputy Chief?
She won't let me touch it.
Okay, so the firefighters produced this on their own. They used the drone to video it, and we brought they take the one of the cars we get, they flipped it over and they pushed it inside. So the reason why I show you that is to show you the value of our training facility that we have here. If you want to go into pictures. Motor vehicle crash training. This is what they call a dash roll-up, in which they remove the dash from the vehicle. You never remove the patient from the vehicle except for in a rapid extrication. You remove the vehicle away from the patient. That's what we train on. And another advantage of this is they get, as you've seen some of the training with the school buses and situations like that, different types of vehicles we get. We get to train on. This is a roof remove. This is a full-on extrication drill where we remove the roof, remove the doors, do a side out. So do a dash roll up here. If you can go ahead. Does this look real or is it training? I'll tell you that it is training. So we'll move on to the next recent motor vehicle crashes. This accident took place on Bonita Grand. Unfortunately, a dump truck driver ran into a head-on collision with this vehicle. This was the vehicle with the door still attached. And these are the guys, hold on there. They're doing what they just trained on, a dash roll-up. The patient is still in the vehicle at this point. That's once the vehicle has been extricated, or the patient has been extricated. This is when they peel the roof. This is actually an incident. It was a pin-in. The driver, obviously it's on the driver's side. The patient's injured, of course. So these are some of the other maneuvers that we practice on a regular basis. If you can go ahead and continue, Jessica. This shows them in actual real life doing it. Now these are recent. These are all within the last few weeks. See, obviously you heard the patient yell a little bit because she's nervous, but that's firefighter, I believe it's firefighter Weiss, basically comforting her. The vehicle normally is stabilized, and we try to get somebody in there to help the patient. I don't know if anybody's in there on this particular call, but we try to get somebody in the vehicle with them because it's very, very scary, obviously, with what's going on. So, move. And that's the way it looks after the roof is removed from the vehicle and the patient is put in an extrication, basically C-collar, backboard, the works, and the firefighters can start IVs on them while they're actually doing this training, or actually doing this extrication. Go ahead, continue. This took place on Easter. I was actually jogging. This is right out front of Hawthorne. Early morning, I saw the trucks coming, and I knew it had to be something pretty significant. As you can see, a head-on collision, more or less. Somebody turning left, somebody coming on. 3-car collision, several patients, hazardous fluids leaking, some gas, some radiator fluid. There's the front of the vehicle. This was April 16th. 3-car vehicle, multiple transports. This was at Shangri-La, as we indicate. The next one, please. Thank you. This was another call that we ran, the specifics of this call, but you can see it's a significant accident. This is later on in the call, once the hazards are secure. As you can see, the white powder out front, that's absorbent for any kind of hazardous fluids, so they don't leak into cause an environmental hazard, or should it be gasoline, you see some poured on the back, so it doesn't create a fire hazard as well. And you see the hose line laid there. This was another one, April 23rd, on I-75. Now, when we look at this, go ahead, continue, Jessica. Now, I want you to take a close look at this. That's the vehicle underneath when they're lifting the vehicles up. And you see there's a better picture. You see the Paratex, which are the things with the yellow strips on the side. Those are bracing. So now what you need to understand is who is engineering this operation. I'll tell you who's engineering, our lieutenants are engineering the lifting of this vehicle to remove the other vehicle and the patients from the vehicle below. Go ahead, Jessica. That's when they have obviously the tractor trailer lifted up off the vehicle and using Paratex. This was a Memorial Day, just recently, out here on Bonita Grand. This was a head-on collision. I believe in this, let me hold up right there. In this on this call, they had 4 pin-ins on Bonita Grand. That's 4 people they had to actively extricate that were pinned in these vehicles. This was it wasn't quite an MCI, but it was close enough to an MCI. We had 5 ambulance units, am I correct, Deputy Chief? 5 ambulance units, 4 trauma alerts, 5 initial trauma alerts, 1 downgraded, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and 4 trauma alerts that were delivered to the hospital. Continue. There's one of them right there, firefighter treating one of the patients that was extricated from the vehicle, from one of the vehicles, and that's in the act. Once again, they are doing what they trained in doing in this facility, which is extricating a person from the vehicle. There's another treating of the patient on there. And just to show you, one of the important reasons why we do ride fire trucks is because you never know when these calls are going to go in. Whatever vehicle anybody's in, they have to have their toolbox. The reason why this picture is here is because that's Lieutenant Adam Hughes. He was on his way back from the Memorial Day service, in which time they received the call, and when they showed up on their engine, they were capable of extricating that patient within minutes using the jaws of life and other rescue techniques. So I just want to also accentuate the value of this training facility here and the training department that we have here, and the ability to be able to do this at our facility. With years ago, before this facility, we had to go elsewhere, and we could not complete the high level of training that we have now without the facility. In fact, everyone from at least 3 counties come to our facility to use it for not only auto extrication, but fire, hazmat, and numerous other things, confined space. So I just want the board to understand of where some of the taxpayers' dollars are going with your equipment and training for the firefighters. And I believe that's it. So thank you for your indulgence.
Chief, 2 of those intersections I have to pass through on my way home and coming here. I was wondering about hazard pay.
Yes, sir. And,
Chief,
yes, sir.
on a rollover for the car, do you have any special procedure to prevent the gas from getting out of that car?
We do, if
Or-
it's,
or we don't rely on the gas cap. I guess maybe we do rely on the gas cap.
the gas caps and the way the
Mate.
the tanks are done
Yeah.
today are pretty good. They're pretty safe. And many times, like a lot of times in the movies, you see explosions. However, typically in a fire situation, I haven't seen in my 25-year career 24-year career an explosion, simply because what happens is the gas tank either ruptures or it melts before you have a levee. So you're more concerned with gas pouring out of the vehicle and catching fire from a spark from the jagged metal, which is the reason why we usually pull a hose line with foam to cover, because, not only the trauma situation when you have a car wreck like that, but all the chewed up metal against concrete obviously can cause a high fire hazard, and that's one of the reasons why we do have an engine respond with all of that equipment.
Chief, what about the cars that don't have gas caps now, the new ones? Is that a problem?
They seal off.
It has
It has an
not,
internal cap.
yeah.
But does that?
It's a
does that seal?
backflow preventer,
That
more or
seals?
less, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And that's all I have.
Deputy Chief Scott?
Yeah, I'd like to, that last call the chief just reviewed, I just wanted to go over some times. I think it reflects a little bit on some of the things we talked about, you specifically, sir, tonight, and the commissioners. The chief mentioned that there was 5 ambulances that came in on that call. So when we talk about the 2.5 ambulances in Bonita, I think it's important to note that we required 5, and I just want to quickly go over the times with you on how long it took them to get there and how long it took to get these patients out off that scene. So the first ambulance was on scene. It was right here out of the station, and it was on scene within 3 minutes, and that first patient was gone in 12 off scene. The second ambulance was there in 7 minutes and gone in 15 off scene. third was 11 minutes, gone in 18. The last two were 8 minutes till they reset on scene from their tone time. Now, they were a little behind because all the ambulances weren't dispatched exactly at the time. As they got on scene and they triaged and they evaluated patients, they called for more units. And then they were gone in 13 and 20 minutes. So to the trauma center at D1 up at Lee Memorial, every single patient on scene was there in under 45 minutes to the trauma center.
The golden hour.
Which you've heard of the golden hour. So this is a pretty outstanding call when you saw the vehicles that you saw, extricating all of them. 4 out of the 5 were trauma alerted and went to the trauma center and were all there well under an hour.
And no helicopter.
1 went by helicopter, yes. And be honest with you, that patient was the last one to get to the scene. It was transferred. What we do now is we put the patient in the ambulance.
Right.
And they leave and they rendezvous if the helicopter's not on scene yet. The helicopter's timelines, and I just had this conversation with EMS county leadership, because of the flight plans and the approval they need, it's a longer process to get that helicopter in the air. So we're working on dispatching it earlier, and in fact, they'll even launch the helicopter before we get on scene if we request it, because we're trying to speed that process up. Because I know you know this, but it's worth noting here, in trauma calls, it's all about the speed at which we can get them to the trauma center. There's very little we can do besides interventions for bleeding and airway. But after that, there's nothing we do on scene that slows down that transport. So literally, as fast as the ambulances can show up and we can get them out of the vehicles, they go in the back and they're gone. And we don't wait even on scene for the helicopter. We rendezvous. So that's the practice we're doing, especially on the extreme south end of the county like this. We meet at Bonita Medical Center up there at the Brooks, and sometimes, of course, we can meet here or any of the LZs, designated LZs along the way. So, and Medic 29 was one of the units that showed up that we referenced in that email. That's what I was alluding to earlier when I talked about that, and they were coming.
Well, that actually wasn't terrible response times for having 5 ambulances on scene. That particular case wasn't too bad.
No, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. They've been diverting a bit based upon the call type. If it's a critical call like that, they'll divert other ambulances from other calls to move them to, a call like this. So I thought it was very good. We did a QA, an after action review in here. The chief attended, and Deputy Chief Madden, and we actually had South Medcom from EMS there and one of the crews. So we did a full after action review and Q&A on it, and it went very well. I thought everything on that call was exceptional, including EMS's response too.
From the time of accident, there was 5 victims, you say?
Yes, sir.
Were some of them on the scene as long as 15, 20 minutes before they got transported?
Yes.
And during that time, the fire department treated them, stabilized them, and kept them?
Yes.
Well, some of that was
Obviously,
extrication time too, right?
There was some extrication time. All of those people
Yeah,
but
but
one
still, yeah.
were in the vehicle still.
Yeah.
So they had to triage them, get them out, count for hazards, like we mentioned with gasoline, lines pulled.
Yeah.
There's a few things that happen there, of course. And I thought, the first most critical patient, as they triage, they prioritize who leaves first. And the first person being off scene. Now, I say 12 minutes, that's from tone time. From
Right.
when we received the call in 12 minutes,
Yeah.
that person's in the ambulance and gone after that accident. Pretty impressive.
And I think most of what has happened historically in calls like that, whenever you have a pin in, the most amount of time is spent cutting the person out of the car.
Yeah.
That's why I was reiterating the training here, because they work as a team, and the more they do it, the less time it takes them to remove people from the vehicle. It used to take us, when I was, doing it, a lot longer than what these guys can do it now, because they're cutting cars all the time for training. So that's a very, very, about 12 minutes is excellent.
This is one of the things we went over in the review. It was minutes, and they took the door off the car to get the people out, the most critical patients on the Rapid X. And a lot of that they complimented was the tools we bought.
Yeah.
There's no hoses, there's no starting the hydraulic units, there's not all those connections. They pull it out of the truck, they walk up to the side of the vehicle, and they're working in seconds from the time they arrive on scene.
That's a very good point. If you weren't here or aware that we bought the new hydraulic or not hydraulic, but the battery-run hearse tools. So they don't have to pull it off the truck, hook up the hose lines, start it, choke it, run it, bleed it, whatever they have to do to get it running. They run it off with battery operated and start to work right away. That saves.
I still remember a call when we first got that we climbed over a guardrail on 75 while the truck went and turned around, and somebody
Yeah.
went over and started cutting the car before the
That
truck
was
got there.
Assistant Chief DeWitt.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
But,
We threw him in the back of the Tahoe and ran out on the interstate. to
But,
do
I'm
that.
thinking,
Yeah.
it's those silly little things that sound silly now that make a difference to somebody
Yeah.
living and dying. And having something that portable and that powerful it was an excellent tool for this
Yeah.
department to have.
It's proven itself to be.
No, it has literally
Almost
saved
invaluable.
lives. It's
Sure.
the value of that technology cannot be understated.
Every truck has a hearse tool,
Yes, sir.
and you replace the
I
hydraulic
think,
ones.
I think all of them have been replaced, right?
All of them
Yeah.
replaced.
We have the hydraulic unit still on the squad as a backup,
As backup, yeah.
just in case, to put more of those on scene if need be.
Yeah.
But the other compliment, or the thing they recognized and they pointed out on this, is without the engines running, the communications between the crews and with the patients inside the vehicles is much better as well, because they don't have that engine out there, that two-cycle, engine running, they can't hear anything.
Right.
So, just another thing they point out, not being on those scenes as much, they feed us back and we realize how good those investments were.
Yeah, I was pre-battery operated.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you. And Deputy Chief Madden's report is in the pack with significant slowdown this month. Yes, sir. You never know it by looking at all these videos, but at least there's a little bit of a slowdown on the volume of calls. Any public comment?
Jeff Maturo. I'd just like to say that the chief's presentation, that kind of underscored the city's need for ambulances. What I'd like to know is, and I don't know if you can help me with this, is where's the disconnect? Is it EMS? Is it the county commissioners, the medical director? What's keeping us, preventing us from having them? Or is it a combination of all of them together? I'd like to say that there's power in numbers. You guys had some great ideas. We can fill the commissioners' chambers, and they're meeting with concerned citizens, and that wouldn't be hard to do with some emails. I mean, that pictures speak louder than words, and when you see the amount of accidents we had here, the general public doesn't know, and they don't know that we have 2.5 ambulances. So we were fortunate because it had a good outcome and EMS did well. And I'm not anti-EMS, I just want us to be able to provide ambulances for people when they need them. And finally, echoing what Chairman Lohan said, get the media involved. Because people they can't appreciate how bad we need them, and no one appreciates what you guys do in terms of these accidents. I live here, I live close by to all these accidents, I wasn't aware of one of them. So I'd say good job, and we just need to educate the public because they really don't know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment this evening?
Alex Grant, I just wanted to make a suggestion to the board to think long-term on the pension liability, looking at it, 10, 15 years out. Now, none of you may be here on that time, but what you're trying to do, you're trying to prevent a problem from occurring 10 or 15 years from now. So if you can act on the pension liability situation or try to plan accordingly now, you may prevent a problem for a future fire commission down the road. See what I'm getting at? Thank you.
Thank you.
May I comment on that, too? Please. Pension liability is an actuarial number. Our pension is actuarially sound, if I'm not mistaken. Our input to the pension, contributions, interest, the insurance fund, and the district's contribution to the pension is actuarially the amount of money required to keep it sound.
By state law.
The pension liability is a number that would, if you did away with your pension today and you were going to pay everybody, that's the number you would have to have. Nobody has that number. Nobody has that kind of money. That's my opinion.
That's a
belief.
fact. That's
And
a
with all
very,
due respect, that's if you can earn 7.5%, and that's where the problem is. You tell me where you're getting 7.5% today, and I'd love to buy some.
That's what they have earned. Is that but let me tell you something. That's the rate of return that we aim for. If that rate is not achieved, the other factors make up the difference.
which is why your pension liability changes
That's
every
right.
year. That's why
That's
you have to
right.
put more money in this year
We
and
put
not
more
as
money
much
in.
next year.
If we
and-
don't get it in the stock market, we get it, I hate to say it, from the taxpayer, really. But we're not sitting here with a $21 million debt for anybody right now. If every one of our firefighters lives to their retirement, they will get their pension. There is no shortfall. Do you believe that?
Yeah, Ron Pure. Well, if there's some bad times ahead, there will be a shortfall, and the taxpayer will have to make up the difference, Ed. We know that they're projecting, out in the future, but I think it works. One thing that you guys have the benefit of is the growth of the city at the rate that we've been going for the past many years, and it's made the payouts that former commissioners and you guys have endorsed, it doesn't do anything about making those payouts any less by having the extraordinarily high payouts that you provide the retiree.
You keep saying that we do not have anything to say about the pension, and I've told this
Yeah, I know,
publicly
pension board.
many times. No, it comes from the state. It's an unfunded liability from
Yeah.
the state, and you should be, and anybody who has a problem with the pension should be in Tallahassee talking to the people that control it.
No. I think we should be here talking to you guys about it because you have some say in the matter.
We have zero say.
You also seem to be implying that all those on the pension plan in the state get the same payouts, i.e., do they all retire at 30 years and 55 years old and get 100% plus?
Well, we don't do that here. We're at a 3.
You're not a part of it being a
We're at a 3. We're at the bare minimum the state requires us to have, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Well, can you answer whether or not Florida state employees at large get that kind of a payout?
They do. It's mandated that the multiplier has to be a 3.
And their
Now-
payout is 100% at 30
No,
years
it's
and
75%.
55.
If you do the math, at 25 years, you use the multiplier, and that works out to 3/4. And when we changed the contracts, we did the 2-tier. When I came on board here, you could get 100%, okay? We changed that multiplier, and we actually did it before the state actually changed some things around. So if you really look at the numbers and what's happened to the pension in the last few years, we've made significant changes that are within the realm of our power.
But
The
that-
things that aren't in the realm of our power, we can't do anything about.
Right, but that was finalized by the state, was it not, because of the downturn in the economy?
It was finalized by the state, but we were out ahead of that curve and did it before the state actually changed that law. But we did it on our own, and then it became in the following year.
Yeah, I remember Ed
That
as
stop
being-
and start, and there was many things I don't want to go into.
I
but
remember
it made
Ed
a
as being very much on the side of having that happen. At any rate, Chief, you had mentioned earlier that 4 ambulances are ordered already by North Naples?
I believe that to be true.
Do you know anything more about how they came about? I think you're probably right. I mean, that being, let's order the darn things and we'll implement them and see how the people like them. But you were not abreast of the activity at North Naples at all, of them moving forward to buy 4 ambulances?
Would you like me to answer that, sir?
Yeah, let's just answer it. It has nothing to do with Bonita. North Naples has nothing to do with Bonita, but answer the question.
We knew
and let's
that
move
plan
on.
was we knew that plan was in place. Same as what Estero did.
Well, you see, I would disagree with the chair big time on this.
Again.
North Naples is a different place. It's about 5 miles away to the border to get into North Naples, and I would think
For
that
public
you guys-
comment, for public comment purposes, we have public comment on Bonita Springs and this department, not
Well,
North Naples.
Mr. Chair, that was part of the discussion tonight. I mean, a point was made about a district around the corner that is embarking on buying 4
This is
ambulances.
exactly why we don't answer public comment, is because of conversations like this. Your time is up,
It's not
Mr.
a-
Pure.
It's not a
Thank you.
conversation, it's just a little dialogue. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
So what'd you do there?